Well, good afternoon, Judge Clemon.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much again for taking some time with us today. What we hope to do is just sort of explore your life and career and your memories and impressions of that, and if you'd like to share with us. I was wondering if we could begin with your childhood, where you grew up, your education.
I grew up principally in the company town called Westfield, Alabama. I was born in Fairfield, which was then the headquarters for the United States Steel Corporation in the South. But U.S. Steel, where my father worked, had a town for its workers. They called it Westfield. It was about 2 miles from Fairfield. The houses were owned by a subsidiary of United States Steel, and it was probably one of the few separate but equal communities in the Deep South. In fact, to some extent, the facilities in Westfield were better for the blacks than they were for the whites. In the sense that there were 3 schools in the Westfield vicinity, they were for blacks. Blacks had to be bused out to Hueytown High School, I guess to Pleasant Grove for elementary school. There were tennis courts for blacks, none for whites. There was a baseball field that was fairly good for its time. In fact, Willie Mays was from Westfield, and I'm sure that he started playing ball on the baseball field at Westfield. So, in those respects, well, there was also a community house for blacks, and there was not one for whites. And so, in those respects, blacks in Westfield had the better end of the deal on the separate but equal formula.
You attended Manoske.
Yes, I did.
And you fairly quickly became active in civil rights activities.
Well, what had happened is that I actually started at Morehouse College in Atlanta, and that was in the spring of 61. I'm sorry, that was in the fall of 61. And there was a lot of activity by students at Morehouse. And the venerable president, Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, exhorted the students to become actively involved in civil rights. Dr. Martin Luther King had just become an adjunct faculty member at Morehouse. And so in the 4 months that I was at Morehouse, I was very much sensitized to the cause of civil rights and civil liberties. And so when I came to Miles College, the students here were likewise involved in some agitation activities, and I became a part of that.
How were you recruited into that? Did students meet in the dorm? Did you meet? Where did you meet?
Well, in those days, at the black colleges and universities, there were required what we call assembly or chapel programs 3 times a week, and the program sometimes featured speakers who talked, among other things, about civil rights. And the experience at Morehouse was the same at Miles. When I came over to Miles, we were required to attend chapel on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Miles had a new president, Dr. Lucius Holsey Pitts, who had aspirations to be a bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, which owned Miles College. Dr. Pitts had been very active in civil rights agitation in his home state of Georgia. He was president of the Georgia State Teachers Association and Association of Black Teachers in Georgia, and they have been fairly active. In fact, Dr. Pitts was recruited unsuccessfully by Martin King to try to work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But since he wanted to be a bishop, this presidency of the CME College in Birmingham was, in his view, a stepping stone towards his ultimate ambition. And so he came to Miles, I guess it was in the spring of '61, a few months before I came back to Birmingham. And at that time, he was taking the lead in encouraging the students of Miles to protest the segregation ordinances and various things. When I came, the president of the student government, Frank Dukes, had embarked on a selective buying campaign, and we were urged in the various chapel meetings and otherwise to become a part of that campaign. And so many of us would, after class, go downtown and try to convince blacks as they entered the downtown department stores not to go in and patronize the segregated facilities. On weekends, we would go in the black community distributing leaflets and bulletins, encouraging support for the activity. And on Sundays, as often as we could, and were allowed to, we would show up at churches, passing out literature. Sometimes the pastor would allow us to speak to the members about what was going on in terms of segregation downtown and the need to do something about it. As a result of that activity, sales in the downtown stores in the week leading up to Easter in 1962 were off by some 40%, reported the Wall Street Journal. The campaign attracted nationwide attention. I recall Newsweek magazine covering the story and referring to Miles College as a broken down black college on the western outskirts of Birmingham. Reverend Shuttlesworth, who had left Birmingham in May of 1961 to accept the pastorate of a church in Cincinnati, would come back virtually every week for mass meetings at the various churches, and when he wasn't in jail, was also encouraging the boycott. And it led to the SCLC having its annual convention in Birmingham in the fall of 1962, at which time they made plans for the historic demonstrations the following spring.